Another recent film that I've watched is The Shrouds, David Cronenberg's most recent film, and potentially his last, as he's been having greater and greater difficulty getting funding for his films after such a long break, and he's no spring chicken. It's the story of a man called Karsh, who's developed a technology that allows people to view in real time the decomposition of their loved ones in their graves using a special 3D imaging shroud in which they're buried. Karsh was inspired to create this after the death of his own wife and is still struggling with her memory, particularly because he's close friends with his late wife's twin sister, played by Diane Kruger. However, various elements seem to be affecting his environment. There's plans for him to expand this technology into China. The graveyard that he administers in Toronto is vandalized, and various other elements also occur. Um, the film was inspired for Cronenberg by the recent death of his own wife, and clearly the film is him working through his grief through his art. And that should never be sneered at or frowned upon or criticized as a means of dealing with one's own emotions and trauma. That said, I don't think this is a very good film. I think it's one of Cronenberg's weaker films because it takes that central concept of the grave technology, but never really develops it, and the result is quite a dull and static drama about the characters and their relationships, in which the grave tech concept is really very, very peripheral. It never becomes part of the story or becomes an engine for the story or an engine for acceleration and change in the way that technology is used in many of his other films. Think back to the, the almost sentient diseases of Shivers or Rabbit, or the mutation of the fly, or the psychological change and development in things like Eastern Promises or A History of Violence, or even Cosmopolis. There's never anything more interesting, and I feel that the Gravetech element could probably be removed and the film turned into a fairly conventional drama without a science fiction element. Um, Vincent Cassel is an unusual choice to play Kosh, but he's rather good. Diane Kruger is good. Um, Guy Pearce is, I wouldn't say miscast, but the character is so odd as Kosh's nominal ex-brother-in-law that who's also, I think, married to I think the twin sister. It's hard to remember because the film was really kind of struggling to retain my attention. But it's a very odd performance, and there's espionage elements mixed in as well. And I thought a lot of this is retreading earlier stuff. I remember the old story about Cronenberg having gone through a divorce and remarried and becoming a father again, and having money thrown at him by the Canadian government to make films for them, and deciding, well, what I really want to do is make a spy movie. A good commercial spy movie. And he made Scanners, which is what a spy movie looks like to him. And there's elements of Scanners in terms of the espionage and the political material here, but it just feels a bit warmed over. And I couldn't help feeling that Cronenberg has the absolute right to process his grief and his trauma at his wife's death. That is, as I said, absolutely beyond question. I think that it was a mistake to make this film as a way of doing so, or at the very least to actually treat it as an actual practical material, a practical concern, rather like Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain, intended as a very fluent, hyperactive love letter to his then wife, Rachel Weisz, but the film is almost impenetrable to anybody else. This is a piece of work intended really only to be seen by one person, and that person has passed away. I don't begrudge Cronenberg trying to keep that artistic sense, that filmmaking sense of his supple. Maybe there will be another Cronenberg film, but this is really little more than a cathartic exercise for the filmmaker, and it's hard to say that this is a film that's really suitable for audiences.